Now, before we can even get into coaching, we need to go through what is called an MCR. What we are talking about here, just to define it, is what we call a mutual coaching relationship. We don't get to move forward with the individual until we've sort of nailed this part down. And really what we want to emphasize in this part is how important it is that we start strong, right? We create awareness, we get their agreement. The objective is they buy into coaching. We've hit that nail on the head. We've transferred responsibility. They're receiving this as the adult, not that child ego state. Now, the rules for an MCR follow the same rules as a rite of passage question, which is there's an announcement of the topic. So, hey, there's an introduction to the fact that there is an issue with their behavior, with their performance, with their skill, with their knowledge or their attitude. And there's a commitment that you want to work with them. The outcome from the MCR is them saying, yes, I am open to getting together with you, to receiving feedback from you, to coming up with a coaching plan, and there's a little bit of a development plan that goes in there. So before we sort of go too deep through the coaching process, we're going to play with this a little bit. And you'll notice they're set up to be a little bit challenging scenarios. You got Wendy in marketing, who's really thinks she's the bee's knees. Right? She's awesome, right? But people don't like her. You got Michael, lacking attention to detail, right? Making mistakes, continually having to follow up with Michael. Some of these issues are he's consistently calling in sick, he's coming in late, he's distracted, he's not as productive, super friendly, super creative, and strong relationship. The question is how would you approach him? What would the issues be that you would work on with him? And how would you hold Michael accountable for this improvement, right? Hey, Michael, listen, hope you're well. Glad that I caught you. You know, I want to take some time to sit down because I've got some observations and feedback that I want to share with you about specifically inconsistency in your performance. You know, there's a lot of absenteeism, right, in the sense that you are calling in sick. There's a way that we want you building rapport and relationships with your peers and sort of, you know, paying attention to the cues of your peers. And when you think you're socializing with them, you might be interrupting them and disrupting their work. My perception is that maybe you're avoiding certain responsibilities and it's showing up in these ways, like calling in sick and, you know, being late. I mean, are you? I mean, am I reading into this, or is it something else? Now, what's interesting about this, and you know, we could sort of throw in this next variable, maybe there's some outside factors. Maybe a single parent, and they're trying to sort of get their kid off to school each morning, and that's what we're trying to draw out of this. What's going on with the lateness? Like, what's happening with the schedule here? Remember, I always like to keep these standards, like, you know, like, have you noticed that? Like, you know, as per me sharing this feedback with you, would you agree that this is maybe a concern and an issue? Yes. Okay, cool. I have some thoughts on what we can do to help support you and improve these areas. Would you be willing to work with me a little bit on that? Cool. Because we need you being consistent in your schedule and showing up, right? Mindful of that line of where we're interrupting people versus socializing. And ensuring that there's a level of performance here, which in turn will allow you to grow in the organization, take things on, boom, boom, boom. Is that something that's important to you? If yes, fantastic. If not, glad I asked that question. All right. And maybe not see you later, but now, you know, because all of these things, it's not always about coaching someone. We might argue that some people are not coachable. And at that point, we are now managing the person and managing the task. And I always want to remind people that even though we live in this world of leadership, there's still an element of managing. Like we need to ensure that certain things are happening. You know, I just met with, so I was at the office yesterday and I was meeting with the owner, the one that owns the building. And her name is Angela. She's great. She's like the admin office manager there. Anyway, chatting. She's like, by the way, I'm leaving at the end of the month. I made a joke. Another one, right? She looked at me like, what do you mean? I'm like, no, I'm just teasing. But I'm like, why? Like, what's up? And she's like, truthfully, I live downtown and the commute here is a disaster. And she takes transit. So between transit or even driving, it's hard. You know, she's stressing out about being late and like the traffic. Okay, that could be an outside factor, for example. Now, it doesn't excuse the lateness, but now we might sort of take a different approach. Again, I'm digging a little bit. What's up? Are we aware that this is an issue? Are we in agreement that this needs to be fixed? And are you committed to working on this with me? And sometimes it's a little bit of a pitch. Hey, glad I bumped into you. I wanted to talk to you. You know, I've noticed as of lately, there's a few things like being late and, you know, being inconsistent in regard to sick days. All right, let's go to the second one. Scenario number 2, marketing manager. She reports directly into you. She's highly critical. Her name's Wendy. She's very insecure, although Wendy thinks she's an amazing leader and there's nothing wrong. She knows everything there is to know about managing and coaching and leading. She's done all the courses. You've offered to send her to a leadership course, which she responds where she doesn't need it. How do you approach Wendy? What issues would you work on with her? And how would you hold Wendy accountable? So Wendy is quite typical, actually. Usually hired because they've got that resume. You don't discover their personality until 6 months into it. And, is one of those, like, she's really good. However, there's these problems, right? And if we can just fix these problems, these interpersonal problems. Now, the key thing with Wendy is she's insecure. But it's a vicious type of insecurity. It's the critical parent that's insecure. So always blaming, always attacking, always faulting, someone else's fault, not me, easier to sort of push it towards other people. So what exactly are we going to articulate and communicate? One of the things I'll give you a hint or I'll remind you of, this is the importance of the nurturing parent tonality. Still assertive, right? But I'm here to support you. And the reason for that is she's got that sort of insecurity and she could be quite sort of abrasive in her approach. And we don't want to end up in a tug of war with her. It's not me, it's this. If I wasn't dealing with this, then I wouldn't have to do that. Like that's what starts to happen is they start to counter everything with an objection and an argument. So if we're going to say, hey, can I talk to you about your turnover? That's it's not a bad way to start it, but we can't now then drop in, but I think you're great. And should sandwich that. Here's a really great sort of question. If I told you that we haven't seen this type of turnover in the department in the past, would you consider the fact that this might be something we need to address and change? Now, some of these questions actually will come in later. Like when we're putting the coaching plan together, that would be a really like, hey, I've noticed like anytime I try to sort of give you leadership training, there's a sort of resistance to doing it. Like, have you ever considered what the benefits would be to going and experiencing some of these programs and developing extra tools? Not why are you resistant, but what is the resistance to learning new leadership? Maybe we could even get into, again, the nurturing parent tonality. It's really important for me that we are able to support leaders in their continued growth. And one of the things I've tended to learn about leadership as I've gone through some of these programs is, we don't know what we don't know. And if we're going to be navigating some of these challenging situations, having the additional tools, frameworks, ideas, concepts, more in the back pocket is always beneficial. Considering that the fact that how we advance as people today with technology and with information, I'm a believer that lifelong learning is one of the most important things that we can lean into. And when we look at people going to do programs, we look at this as like a sign of their confidence and their learnability and their willingness to continually improve. Right? And I want to make sure my players, the people that I'm with, are in that same mindset. Can I ask you a couple questions? As per what I just shared, where are you sitting now with this opportunity to learn? Do you see this as something beneficial? Would you see this as something that's going to be a waste of time? And I might get to the stage of a Wendy where I go, all right, this is not a performance coaching issue here. This is now a performance improvement plan. So performance coaching takes on the tonality of a development plan. We're advancing and we're getting stronger. Performance management is the performance improvement plan. It's the same template, but one is more if this doesn't improve, you're gone. The other is this is part of what we're going to continue to grow as. And at this point, we just want them to buy into the fact that I'm aware of what the issue is, or I'm aware that you now think this is an issue. Because with the Wendy, I didn't think there was an issue before, but now my managers rolled up and said, hey, as a culture, as an organization, these are the values that we carry and these are the expectations of leaders. One of the clear things that become an indicator to us that there's a leadership challenge is when we start to see turnover, right? Considering the fact that we have a history for this stuff. So there's a wonderful saying, which is people don't leave companies, they leave managers. Would you consider the fact that this turnover rate, you are partly responsible for it? Very powerful question that may get us to the agreement. Hard question though, or hard thing to say to someone. I love this one. If I told you this is a concern that goes against our corporate culture and what our values are, would you be open to looking at how to improve things? I'm a little concerned, I'm going to change the word, I'm a little frustrated at the fact that we're trying to put resources in place for you to grow as a leader, which seem to be rejected. Can you tell me a little more about what are some of the reasons you don't want to go through to this leadership program? Chip away at it, chip away, chip away, chip away, chip away, chip away. All right, so remember the nurturing parent can be firm. Critical parent can also be firm. It's just a different tonality. I learned this a long time ago. Critical parents, we have an easy time with this, but we mess it up because we're too hard in the delivery. The faster and the earlier you say something, the greater chance you give them to improve. It's what you said before. Been here 20 years, never received feedback. And by the way, we talked about this in assertiveness as well. We said one of the most effective times for us to assert ourselves from that timeline is when we're trying to create awareness. Like, hey, like, ding, ding, little cautionary sort of light went off, which is there's a lot of turnover here. Let's sit down and examine what's contributing to this. Right? This is abnormal or unusual. It's another line that I learned a long time ago. This was specifically on sales. We used to do technical training, video production, audio. We were Apple's training center in North America. Super cool, like super cool world. Right? Got flown down to Cupertino, got all the cool Apple t-shirts. Right? We taught the Apple stores the Genius bars, so when we rolled in, we got special treatment. We went musicians and DJs and artists and film people. The guy that created Inspector Gadget came and did one of our programs, gave us one of his books, Canadian, Toronto actually. And all of a sudden, sales stopped immediately. Sales stopped. What is going on? Right? And this went on for 60 days. Jesus, exactly. All right, revenue, I'm like, this. Anyway, I'm sitting down and I'm like, I just don't understand what is going on. Like the market, the this, the that. And someone said to me, listen, business doesn't change. Something in the business changes. That's the line here. Like if all of a sudden you got turnover, like something's changed in that department or in that business. And when we dug into it, part of the lead list for us was something called the Apple Locator. So when someone went to Apple's website, they would search training, we would pop up. There was a broken link. So when they were searching on Apple's website, we weren't popping up. But it's a great line. Business does not change, but something in the business changes. So back to the Wendy scenario, if we haven't had turnover, what's the thing that's changed? Wendy. It's also in performance as well. When we see a shift in someone's performance, something has changed.